Welcome to our Bible study, and we are looking at the second part of the Gospel of John in the 6th chapter. And just to let you know that if you have any questions or comments, please send them to me at revpepsi@gmail.com. So the passage opens up at the 16th verse. Jesus is walking on water. When evening came, his disciples went down to the sea. They got into a boat and started across the sea to Capernaum. It was dark, and Jesus had not yet come to them. The sea became rough because strong wind was blowing. When they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus walking on the sea coming near the boat, and they were terrified. But he said to them, "It is I. Do not be afraid." They wanted to take him into the boat, and immediately the boat reached the land towards which they were going, and the bread of heaven. The next day the crowd had stayed on the other side of the sea, and there had been only one boat there. They also saw that Jesus had not got into the boat with his disciples, but the disciples had gone away alone. Then some boats from Tiberias came near the place where they had eaten the bread after the Lord had given thanks. So when the crowd saw that neither Jesus nor his disciples were there, they themselves got into the boats, went to Capernaum looking for Jesus. When they found him on the other side of the sea, they said to him, "Rabbi, when did you come here?" Jesus answered them, "Very truly I tell you, you were looking for me not because you saw signs, but because you ate your fill of the loaves. Do not work for the food that perishes, but the food that endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man will give to you. For it is on him that God the Father has set his seal." Then they said to him, "What must we do to perform the works of God?" Jesus answered, "This is the work of God, that you believe in him whom he has sent." So they said to him, "What sign are you going to give us then, so that we may see it and believe you? What work are you performing? Our ancestors ate manna in the wilderness, and as it is written, he gave them bread from heaven to eat." Then Jesus said to them, "Very truly I tell you, it was not Moses who gave the bread from heaven, but it was my Father who gives the true bread from heaven. The bread of God is that which comes down from heaven and gives life to the world." They said to him, "Sir, give us this bread always." Jesus said to them, "I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never be hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. But I said to you that you have seen, and yet you do not believe. Everything the Father gives me will come to me, and anyone who comes to me I will never drive away. For I have come down from heaven, not to do my own will, but the will of the one who sent me. This is the will of him who sent me, that I should lose nothing of all that he has given me, but raise it up on the last day. This is indeed the will of the Father, that all who see the Son believe in him and may have eternal life, and I will raise him up on the last day." Then the Jews began to complain about him because he said, "I am the bread that came down from heaven." They were saying, "Is this not Jesus, the son of Joseph, whose father and mother we know? How can he now say, 'I have come down from heaven'?" Jesus answered them, "Do not complain among yourselves. No one can come to me unless drawn by the Father who sent me, and I will raise that person up on the last day. It is written in the prophets that they shall be taught by God, and everyone who has heard and learned from the Father comes to me. Not that anyone has seen the Father except the one who is from God. He has seen the Father. Very truly I tell you, whoever believes has eternal life. I am the bread of life. Your ancestors ate manna in the wilderness, and they died. This is the bread that comes down from heaven, so that one may eat of it and not die. I am the living bread that comes down from heaven. Whoever eats of this bread will live forever, and the bread that I will give for the life of the world is my flesh." The Jews then disputed among themselves, saying, "How can this man give us his flesh to eat?" So Jesus said to them, "Very truly I tell you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of the Man and drink his blood, you will have no life in you. Those who eat my flesh and drink my blood have eternal life, and I will raise them up on the last day. For my flesh is true food, and my blood is true drink. Those who eat my flesh and drink my blood abide in me, and I in them. Just as the living Father sent me, and I live because of the Father, so whoever eats will live because of me. This is the bread that comes down from heaven, not that which your ancestors ate, and they died. But the one who eats this bread will live forever." He said these things while he was teaching in the synagogue of Capernaum. So with Jesus walking on water, it says, when the evening came, the disciples went down to the sea. They got in the boat. They started across the sea to Capernaum. It was now dark, and Jesus had not yet come. Several of the disciples were fishermen, so they were accustomed to fishing on this very lake. They knew the lake well. When they got in the boat, they thought of rowing across the lake at night, and that doesn't concern them. And we're told that Jesus had not come to them. This actually was the second time Jesus dealt with his disciples on a stormy Sea of Galilee. First time Jesus was present in the boat, sleeping. This time he comes to them. And we're told the sea became rough and strong, and the wind was blowing. The wind alone was bad enough, but the wind also whipped up the waters, making the troublesome sea. See, the Sea of Galilee was and is well known for its sudden and violent windstorms that quickly make the lake dangerous. So we have the disciples, they're trying to row. They row for about 3 or 4 miles, and all of a sudden they see Jesus coming. And just, of course, in a nick of time. But they're afraid. Do you know, one of the most common phrases in the Bible is, "Fear not." But so often we're afraid. We're afraid when we find ourselves in trouble. They were afraid when they see Jesus walking in the water. Whether it's because they don't really fully recognize it's Jesus, or really recognize who Jesus is, or whether they think it's a ghost. Jesus used the term, "It is I." It's enough to announce his presence, and the disciples he would meet in their frustration and their fear. There are places in this gospel where the word ego eimi, I am, have the nature of divine designation. I am the bread of life. I am the door. I am the good shepherd. Do not be afraid. Jesus came to bring supernatural help and comfort to his disciples. His presence gave them what they needed, even though he came in a very unexpected way. And isn't that the truth? God comes in unexpected ways. We think God's going to act in this way, and instead he acts in this way. So they want to take him in the boat, and immediately the boat reaches the land where they were going. And then we have the part of the passage, the bread from heaven. So we have the crowd, they're looking for Jesus. They see that he doesn't get into the boat. The disciples have gone away, so they haul cargo and they set out to Capernaum looking for Jesus. So we have the following day, the other boats come to Tiberias. Come from Tiberias, and they got in the boats. They're going to Capernaum. They're seeking Jesus. And when they find Jesus, they say, "Rabbi, where did you come from?" They don't understand how he's got there. He didn't get in the boat with the disciples. There's no other boat, and yet he's here. So Jesus doesn't always answer the question that he's asked. And I know anybody who follows politics, we see politicians not answering the question they're being asked, and that's because they're trying to avoid the question. Here, Jesus isn't trying to avoid the question, he's trying to get to the deeper question that's in their hearts, the question they need to answer. He says, I tell you, you're looking for me, not because you saw signs, but because you ate your fill of the loaves. You had bread in an unexpected way, and that's why you're following. So do not work for this food that perishes. You know, the bread they ate there, the fish they ate, it perishes. But work for the food that seeks to get you eternal life. And it is the food that the Son of Man will give you. Where do you come from? You seek me. Not because of a sign, but because you ate your fill. Instead of telling them when and why he came, Jesus tells them why they came. They wanted bread, but more than just bread. And Jesus tells them, don't labor for that which perishes, but for food that endures to eternal life. Those asking the questions of Jesus went to a lot of trouble to follow and to find him. Remember, they want to make him king, and Jesus has basically avoided the crowd. Yet their work was for food that perishes, things that fill the stomach and rule earthly kingdoms. Jesus wants them to labor for stuff that lead to everlasting or eternal life. Jesus made a contrast between miracle things and spiritual things. And we get caught up on material things, right? And we forget to go for the things that lead to real life. Here Jesus is striking at the root of the materialistic aspirations of carnal-minded Galileans and us. He says, the Father has sent him and put his seal on. A seal was the mark of ownership, a guarantee of its contents. When a king or a governor or a ruler or a noble person would send some sort of declaration or proclamation, they would put their seal on it. And only the person who was allowed to open it would, and the seal was the mark that assured that it came from the person who sent it. The tense of the verb here, sealed, suggests that we identify the sealing with one particular event. And I would say that that would be the baptism, the seal of God coming down in the dove. And they said to him, what must we do to perform the works of God? And this is the work of God, that you believe in the one whom sent. You want to do the work of God? Believe in me. Do not labor for food that perishes. And Jesus' reply uses the same word. They want to know, how shall we labor for this? And Jesus says, don't labor for things that perish. And he says, this is the work of God. Jesus' first and foremost command for them and for us is not to do, but to trust and believe. If we want to do the work of God, it begins by believing and trusting in Jesus. And this concludes the second part of John. And again, if you have any questions, send it to the Rev Pepsi. Sorry, not the Rev. RevPepsi@gmail.com. See you next week.